Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to introduce the usage method of the PGT05 burner. When we are unable to perform programming and download via the SD card, it can program the underlying program for the T5L ASIC to restore its normal operation. Here are the programmed kernel files we prepared in advance. The first two files are the kernels used for programming the 2K screen, and the third file is the kernel used for programming our common standard screen. The fourth file is special. Since the PGT05 burner needs to identify the kernel program named starting with T5UIC, we need to uniformly change the names of the first three kernels to T5UIC1v10. Now, I have a screen that is black due to misoperation, and cannot normally download files via the SD card. Next, we will use the PGT05 burner to program the underlying kernel file to make it return to normal. First, download the kernel file to be programmed through the burner. Note that the name of the kernel file needs to be changed, and it should be uniformly changed to T5UIC1v10. After we supply power to the burner normally, the power indicator light will turn on. When the red light turns on, it means that the programming is completed. Next, power off and pull out the SD card. Then, let's look at the back of the screen. There is a series of programming holes, which correspond one-to-one with the pins of our burner. The position of the square hole corresponds to the 5-volt power supply of the burner. We insert the PG705 burner into the programming port. Before programming, we need to note that we should first disconnect the power supply of the LCD. At this time, our burner does not need additional power supply. Then, press the button of the burner. When our red light turns on, it means that the kernel file has been programmed into the underlying layer of our screen. Next, we reconnect the cable of the LCD. Then power off. Finally, we insert our project file into the SD card. In this way, the screen can download files normally. Now, we have restored the normal blue download interface. After the download is completed, we pull out the SD card, and then power off and power on again. In this way, our screen is restored. Now, what we see is a 2K large screen. Next, let's take a look together at how to program the kernel through the PGT05. First, let's look at the PCB board on the back of this screen and see what the differences are between it and our common standard screen. There are three programming holes here, which are the programming hole for T5LD and the two programming holes for the coprocessors on the left side and at the bottom. Next, we uniformly change the kernel file of the 2K screen to T5UIC1v10 and program it into our PGT05 burner through the SD card. When the red indicator light turns on, it means that the kernel file has been successfully stored in the kernel of the burner. Next, we first program the kernel file of T5LD. Similarly, we need to make the position of the positive 5 volts correspond to the square hole. Then, before programming, note that we need to remove the cable of the power supply of the LCD. Finally, turn on the power of the screen. At this time, we find that the power indicator light on the PGT05 burner has turned on. Press the programming key. When the red light turns on, it means that the kernel file has been successfully programmed. Then, we pull out the PGT05 burner. Next, we uniformly change the kernel file of the coprocessor to T5UIC1v10 and program it into our PGT05 burner through the SD card. When the red indicator light turns on, it means that the kernel file has been successfully stored in the burner. Then, remove the SD card. In the same way as before, we respectively program the files into the two programming holes of the coprocessors. When the red light turns on, it means that the kernel file has been successfully programmed. In this way, the kernel files of our two coprocessors have been programmed. Finally, we connect the LCD cable properly, and in this way, the screen can restore its previous normal display.